Hi boys and girls, Ken Smith Fishing. This is video number 19 in the great bass boat search of 2020-2021. We're looking at glass boats. So far we've looked at my Z521C, a Z520L, a 21-foot Caymas, the 921 Pro XP Phoenix, a Vexus, a Blazer, a Bass Cat Puma Hybrid. So this is the 8th or 9th boat we looked at, somewhere in that range right there. And this boat is the Phoenix PHX. So it's the same size as the 921 Pro XP, but it's a little bit different. So I'm just going to jump right into it. You guys have been following these videos. Thanks for following them. I think you'll find this interesting. I like the boat, but you'll see in the grading what I thought about the difference between this boat and all the other boats we've looked at, including the other Phoenix, the 921 Pro XP. Here we go. Something new this morning. I got a mic on, so I'm recording the audio here and the video there, so hopefully this works out. I come down to Richland Chambers to my old friend Terry Hawkins. We've known each other at least 25 years.
Yeah. At
least 25 years. So before we leave, I'm going to show you Terry's man cave if he'll let me. There's a few trophies stacked up around in there.
Few. Always use more, you know.
How many Bass Champs tournaments have you won?
We just won 2.
Oh, you've just won 2 Bass Champs tournaments. The one on Tawakoni, how much weight did you have?
I think we had like, it's in the low 20s, and second was like 17 pounds.
You had like a 5-pound win. It was a huge win. Yeah. On a brutal weekend, if I remember right.
Yeah.
But, so I wanted to fish with Terry. So again, I've talked about this before, right? There's guys who are going to tell you whatever boat they're in is the greatest boat they've ever been in, and they may tell you that every year in a different boat. But you've now been with Phoenix 5 years.
Yeah, this is my second Phoenix, and I've turned the other one after 2 years, so this is
4 years.
Probably 4 years.
Okay, and this is a PHX. Your first boat was a PHX. Now this is a 19. So I will in the video, I'll talk to Larry and I'll tell you guys there's probably a few differences between the 21 and the 19, but it's the same basic boat. And you picked the PHX because in your research is the same as mine. It's the big water boat.
Yeah.
So Terry is, I'm not going to say strictly an offshore fisherman, but that's what you like to do.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get the chance, you're going to go offshore.
Yeah.
So this is the big offshore Phoenix boat. It's got a little higher gunnels. We'll go through the boat when we get on the water, but we're going to spend the morning down here looking around in the boat, just checking it out. There's a couple things I want to see. Unfortunately, we don't have any wind. I'm hoping we'll get a little bit of wind. If not, we'll create our own chop out there this morning. Yeah. So Terry and I will just take it out. We'll bounce it around. I'm hoping he's going to put me on a 9-pounder. You know, I caught an 1160 here years and years ago, but it ain't quite the same lake. What's your biggest stringer over here this year?
It's been a tough year. I hadn't really fished it much this year. It's not much this year, man. It's been tough, but I hadn't spent the time here either. So, I've had big stringers in the past, and had my biggest fish on here is like 1169. But it was years ago also.
Yeah, like mine. I think mine was 96.
Mine was way back there. The lake record was 12 something, so I thought I may have had it, and then didn't have it. And then I think a 13 got weighed in quick after that. Yeah. So it's a cool lake. It's really built up a lot since I've been down here, so I'll be interested to see. All right, so let's go to the lake. I'll do a quick walk around on the boat trailer. Actually, let's do that real quick. So and again, this is really the point of entry we've discovered in all these boats. Fulton jack, Fulton winch. I believe all the Phoenixes now are vault hubs. I think that's correct, and I'll correct myself if that's not the case. And by the way, I've not talked about this, guys. Those vault hubs, if that's it, that's that brand, those are 5-year warranties on those hubs, so that's a nice deal. On the other side, he's got the trailer steps, which is handy for us old guys. This is a really, really pretty boat, and we did a walk around before we started. Again, so Terry's a little bit like Dickie. If you're going to beat a boat up, you're going to beat the boat up. And there's not a stress crack on the boat. So he has put this boat through its paces. And part of why I wanted to look at this boat is it's not a brand new boat. It's got 2 years of heavy use. How many hours are on that motor? It's probably
140, 150.
140, 150 hours. That's when you start seeing problems with the boat. Now, Terry is one of those guys that when he comes off the water, he cleans it.
Yeah.
So he takes care of his stuff, but you're going to see this boat's in great shape, and we're going to take it out and bounce around in it a little bit. All right, so this is going to be a lot easier to do than we've been doing it on the water. We're going to measure the front deck here. So right there. So I was watching the video coming down here. I think Dickie's boat was 64 inches. So this boat may be just a smidge, and I may be wrong. I may remember that wrong. This boat may be just a smidge wider.
I think it is.
You think it is? Yeah. On the front deck?
Yeah.
And then at the pole right there on the back deck, you can see it's 78 inches. So I think that's probably, these boats are all pretty much cookie cutter on the width, these big stable boats. So I'll obviously put the same grid we always put in there, but that's our measurements. We just thought it'd be easier to do sitting right here in the yard than it is out on the water. So I think I said this earlier, but just to kind of reiterate, generally speaking, the guys who've spent some times around Phoenixes will tell you that the 921 is the go fast boat. And you know, there's two configurations we've talked about on the hull, on the cap of that boat, but that the PHX is the big water boat. A little bit slower, but better in rough water. And I'm not saying that the other one's not good in rough water, but that this is probably a little better rough water riding boat. So hopefully we'll get a little bit of wind today and check it out.
It's always had that kind of green plankton looking good.
All right, we're gonna go fishing, or we're gonna go drown in some fake worms or something. All right, guys, Terry's gonna fish a little bit. So Terry and I have been talking. One of the complaints about the Phoenix that I've heard a number of guys make, and we didn't talk about it a lot on the first video, is there's no gaskets, right? So what we've learned is, so these are called slam latches, right? So when you close it, it's locked. You don't have to turn anything. I really, really like those. But a lot of guys have said, oh, but there's no gasket, your box gets wet. By the way, you get high grades for organization down here. Boy, that's a big box. That's real similar in layout to my Ranger box. But what Terry and I were just talking about is, not only is there a lip here, there's a channel here. So he said he's really never had any problems with his boxes getting wet from the deck down. Now, and you know, we talked about this. I'm gonna talk about it again because it's a different boat. But Gary, the owner of Phoenix, is a tournament bass fisherman. So you see all of this stuff that's in here. Now, did you put this little bait hanger, or is that the one that came with the boat?
No, that all come with it.
Yeah, so that's all standard. You got your ruler right there. You got the slam latches. You got rod tubes at the front. Put a lot of rods in there. It's really well thought out. Now, the other thing I didn't talk about, I mentioned it in the grade on Dickie's boat, and I don't want to mess it up. How does this snake light work? You just lift it up?
Yeah, you just pull it out, pull it toward the front, yeah, and just...
Now that reminds me a little bit of War of the Worlds, where that thing was looking for him in the basement, but it's got a snake light in there you can turn on and off so you can move it around and really see stuff well. Again, something that a tournament angler would want, and a tournament angler built the boats. I'm gonna give, one of the things we also talked about, there's that tool place, and we talked about how neat it is that they put it back up out of the way. I'm gonna give Terry more high grades for something that he created in these little boxes. Now, note here, there's no lip around these boxes. So these boxes will catch a little bit of water, but are there drains in the bottom of them?
Yeah, there's a drain down there on that.
So there's drains in the bottom of them, but look what he did in this box right here. he cut a little piece of foam in the bottom of that box so his bottles stay in place. And that what's cool is, and we actually talked about this, whether somebody actually thought this out or it just worked out perfectly, that's tall enough to put your dip and die in. I'm gonna guess that was thought out, that was not an accidental coincidence. Now, again, this is one of the things I dinged the boat on in the 921, and I'm gonna do it again today, is an ice chest that doesn't latch. There's just no way an ice chest that doesn't latch is gonna hold water as well. Now, Terry has a traditional carpeting floor, and actually C-Deck might not even been available in this boat in 19, but it's available now, and I've already told you guys, I won't have another boat that has carpet in the cockpit floor. One of the other things we talked about in the Blazer that, again, guys are thinking out real well. So not only is, so that is the net storage, remember, from the 921, which is really cool. But this also is the floor drain. So it's a huge floor drain. And look, I don't care if you're in a battleship, you're gonna take one over the nose. If you don't take one over the nose, you're not fishing on Toledo Bend. So what I like about those really big drains, whew, Richmond Chambers, is how quickly they'll pull the water out of the floor. And it's something that probably was in some other boats that I didn't catch, but I noticed it in the Blazer, and I see it again in this boat. And that is that this is contoured so that water doesn't gather in the corners. In my Ranger, the whole flooring area is flat. So when water gets in the floor, it'll get on one side or the other and it'll stay there. You see they've sloped this to run the water so that it goes back to the middle and drains out of the boat and stays out of your floor. It's got a similar hidey hole to what, look at here, just like Dickie, he's keeping his spinning poles in there. So it's got that center hidey hole. Got really good shocks, I've noticed, in this boat. It's got that same removable co-angular rod holder. Whoops. Okay. And by the way, I didn't point that out, but one other thing there. So with the slam latches, this actually doesn't hit the plastic, it hits the roller, so you don't have to worry about it tearing up your fiberglass. That one's just a day box. And it's, oh, that one doesn't have a thing on the top. And it's got a drain in the bottom. And you said summertime fishing, you've put ice in here when you're trying to carry extra ice for your fish?
Yeah, my boat before this it's exactly like this one, but it was a 17. But yeah, I have put a bag of ice in there on, on hot days, and it's going to melt some, but still you'll have enough to run your.
Yep, keep your fish alive. Keep your fish alive. So there's a neat rigging option that Terry's added. Part of the fun of doing this is getting around guys. So he put a little line spooler in here. I'm assuming most of that's probably for leader line.
Exactly. That's 8 pound all the way to 20. Yeah, I just use that for the drop shots on the 8 and stuff like that. And then doing a Cinco and stuff like that, I'll go to the braid to 20 and use that for leader line. Cool.
Now, I talked about this and I just noticed it when we did the Vexus review, but the more I thought about this, if I was building my perfect boat, I would not put carpet in any of the boxes. I know it makes it quieter, but it adds weight, especially when it gets wet. And look, I don't care if that's a perfectly hermetically sealed box, I'm gonna open it in the rain. And if I open it in the rain, rain's gonna go in that box. So I saw this in the Vexus, and I'd like to see it in whatever my future boat is. No carpet in the boxes. I was checking for sure, rod box is the same way. No carpet in the boxes, finished fiberglass with a C-deck floor. That's a perfect scenario to me. So maybe, I'm gonna say this, and I still haven't graded the Vexus boat. I'll get that up as soon as I can get to Toledo and look at that boat. But there are some really well thought out things in that Vexus boat. I'm still struggling with the look of it, I told you all that. But that's one of those things that you look at it and you go, that's smart. Why didn't somebody else think? There's no reason to have carpet in there. You're not gonna step in there. There's just no reason to have it in there. So If I were building a boat, it would have finished fiberglass boxes with sea deck in the flooring. You see Terry's rigged his with a locker bar. And again, from a fishability standpoint, you see that's really clean. He does have light switches. Go ahead, you're fine. Light switches across the front. He's got his up-down trim switch, a little bit hard to get to, but that's toggle switches, so you can definitely get to them. And we talked about what's in the newer Phoenixes is 2 buttons, which is really handy to have. You see, he's got his monster power pole buttons down there and a hydro wave. So same as I talked about in the 921, these are my favorite seats. This and the Bass Cat are my 2 favorite seats I've sat in so far. Super sports car feel. Now I'll tell you, you're sitting at a good level. So that's my eye level right there. And you can see he's got two big graphs up here. He's tilted them in, which is cool. Those are really easy to see, but it's also easy to see over the dash for driving the boat. Now, one of the things I gave him a hard time about in that first boat was how hard it was to see your controls, but I see now, there's the little red light that's lighting up the dash panel. And Terry's one of the guys who said, man, I've had no problem with seeing the dash panel. We got a little bit of condensation inside there, but I talked about it in the other boat. I really like having analog gauges, water pressure, trim, battery. I like having analog gauges. You can see it's hard to see his, he's got a Mercury Smart Gauge in here, and he's got an Atlas jack plate. It's hard to see that from sitting, but you can lean forward a little bit and you can see that. Tilt wheel, trim and jack plate. Got that same, now that's a cleat, remember? But you'll also recall Newberry was using that as his cable controls. Same setup as in Dickey's boat in the 921 Pro XP. Your USB plugs down there. Hopefully we'll see Phoenix get those in a box soon. You got a box right there, really handy for all your stuff. By the way, you didn't see it, but under that box right there is where Terry keeps his culling stuff. All right, so a couple things. We talked about this again, same way in the 921. It's 2 separate live wells, which I really like. I like having 2 separate live wells. See those noodles in there? He's cut them the width of his live well. So when his live well fills up, they sit on top of the water, and that stops some of that sloshing issue and bouncing those fish around, or at least bouncing them off the top of the live well. So that is a guy who really prides himself on his fish care. Thinks about it. Good size boxes in the back again. So there's how they control the water, right? Super high lip with a drain, and then it drains right to there, drains into that back box and down to the bottom. Okay, I'm impressed. He has a pair of flip-flops on, and he has a spare pair of flip-flops. There's a man who's broke a flip-flop fishing. I'll try to remember to shoot this again when we're on dry land, but no, that's smart, by the way, and I'm sure I probably could have bought those for mine, but that's those trays that they've got across there, that's a super handy place to put stuff, because that's wasted space in my boat. And if you're going to carry weight in the boat, you want to carry it as far back as you possibly can. So that makes a ton of sense. Same 2 spots back there if a fella needs to stand on the back of the boat for one reason or another. Okay, so battery setting across, prop storage. This is the same layout that Dickey had in his boat. And you'll recall what our regional rep told us was to get into the sump, you got to pull that 1 center battery. Now, I think I talked about this in the Blazer video. And my opinion of this is changing. So fortunately, I've never had to get, actually let me put this up and I'll talk about this. So you see the battery configuration, and if you look across that battery, so there's the center line of the boat right there. So basically you have 3 70-pound batteries on the port side of the boat, and 1 70-80-pound battery on the starboard side of the boat. Now, I don't know anything about race boats. but my suspicion is you're going to get the best performance and ride in a boat when it doesn't have any list to it at rest. And if I know right off the bat I have over 100 extra pounds on one side of the boat versus the other, it seems to me it makes sense to configure the batteries. And my boat, by the way, is even worse because I've got one there, two way over here, and then one there. So I've got all my weight way out to the side. It seems to me it would make sense to have the batteries configured more like the way the Blazer boat batteries were configured, which is 2 and 2 right on either side of the center line of the boat. So that's just a thought I've had. I'm not going to grade anybody for it, but as I think about it, I would rather have my boat sitting as level in the water as possible versus that one time I might actually have to get into my sump, because if they're sitting across the middle, you got batteries in the way of getting in your sump. But just a thought you might think through about how you might want to configure your batteries, because truthfully you could configure your batteries in most of these boats several different ways. This fish, is that a fish? He locked you up, didn't he?
Yeah.
Oh, little guy.
I carry them in,
Uh-oh.
I carry them in those little bags.
Same thing I do, yeah.
Matter of fact, I got that up here. One of your videos.
That was an idea from me.
Yeah.
We were talking about, I asked him how he carried his soft plastics. I forgot, he had told me once. He uses those same laundry bags I use, which is one of my oldest videos. You can buy these. I love them because they're see-through. You can see he does the same thing I do. You can ride on them, but they breathe, so when your plastics get wet, they'll dry out. And you can buy those. I guarantee you he got those at a Dollar General, because that's the brand they carry, for about $1 a piece, $1 to $1.50 a piece. Those are super handy. The only problem with them is you carry too much crap.
Yeah. I kind of, depending on where I'm going, I'll just see the stuff on the wall in there in my garage, so I just kind of grab what I need for that particular lake, and then I'll pack the other stuff in the truck, you know, just in case, you know.
So a more traditional, and traditional to me being what I'm used to, right? A traditional box setup. So the one big center box, 2 boxes on the side. The box on the right-hand side does not have rod tubes, but it'll hold, I'm sure it'll hold an 8-foot rod because it's way long. But you see Terry traveling light the way you ought to be traveling.
Yeah, it's mainly rain gear, stuff like that. And,
rain gear and life jackets.
Yeah, but I mean, you could actually move your plastics to one side in the center box and put you 4 rods on this side, or actually 4 on that side if you wanted. It does have. Yeah,
I saw that it's got your tubes in there.
Yeah.
Now he just said something, and again, I love stuff like this, right? Where a guy's thought through. We're seeing boat manufacturers move away from the rod tubes. Rod tubes are really hard on your rods, so the resolution is you put sleeves on your rods, and then it's like, well, why do I have the rod tubes? And you can see Terry does the same thing I does. He doubles up on some of the tubes, but his idea is leave the organizer in the back here, but across the front just make 2 slots, maybe 6 inches by the width of it. That allows you to have 2 levels of rods. And that's a really, really good idea. That's a really good idea. Because the tubes, I understand why they did them originally, but I think we've all torn up so many eyes without having the sleeves on them, putting them in there. That makes a ton of sense to me. We talked about, you know, the gunnels are pretty high, big water boat. I know that makes the deck look a little smaller, but it's not. Obviously, we've already measured the deck. We know the width of the deck. I will tell you this, if you fish in timber a lot, this protects your rod. So when that rod's dragging down the side of the boat, it's not dragging your rod out with it because it's up above the level that you got your rods laying on the front deck. Fit and finish, you know, on the boat, the glass and the carpet's obviously really good, same as the 921. And I mean, again, we're looking at a boat that's got 140, 150 hours on it, and you can see it's held up really, really well. He takes care of his stuff, but you'd still see wear and tear on some other boats at this level. Front deck's padded. Now, we've not been out and bounced it around enough to get a feel for the ride on the boat, So same thing as in the other boat. There's your old crap handle, and right now it's okay, but I'm telling you, it needs a little more width to really get a hold of it there. That's hard to get a hold of. And you know, in Texas, you know, starting here in about a month, I'll be fishing in gloves, and that's hard to hold on to. This one's fine. It's out of way, it's easy to get a hold of, but I'd like to see them make a little modification. Now, as we talked about before, you can grab this because this seat's the same way, but that's hard to hold on to. When you get something really big around, something that big around's harder to hold on to than something that big around. So I don't co-angle a lot, but I would want a little better grab a hold tub deal right there. I didn't cover it when we were in the sump earlier, but it is the rod strap, excuse me, the straps over the batteries versus a real lockdown battery system. It is a single fuel tank in this boat. But again, as we talked about, you got dual live wells. So I'm gonna fill the live wells while Terry fishes, and we'll do a whole shot running. We'll do a whole shot, excuse me, with the live wells full and check that out. So while we're filling the live wells, Terry and I have been talking, and what we were talking about, first we were talking about remote drain plug versus manual drain plug. And he is a fan of the manual drain plug. And the reason is, and I've had this happen in mine, right? Some fishing line, hydrilla, whatever, soft plastic gets in the sump, gets down there and comes out around your drain plug, and you close it, it won't seal tightly. And you won't know it until your bilge pump kicks on. Now, you're not going to sink because of it, but you will put water in the hull, and you got to get down there and you got to mess with it. So he prefers a manual, the old style screw-in drain plug. But what we then talked about was, on my Ranger and on a lot of boats, there's a valve switch over here that you flip to open and close to switch your live well from fill to empty to recirculate. You do it over here. And man, knock on wood, mine's never broken, but I know a bunch of guys who've had that break, and that's not a Ranger thing. That's just, it just happens with that style. And so we were talking about that, and he goes, that's why I like what they have here. And I didn't realize this. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to show it to you, but way down there in the bottom, below that mesh, that metal mesh, sorry, I'm losing my mind. There is an actual manual screw-in plug to empty or fill your live wells. Now, he leaves his full because he'll just flip it to pump out, but you can manually drain your live wells down there, and you don't have to worry about that thing breaking over here so that you either can't get your live wells opened or can't get your live wells closed. So that goes back to, well, it goes back to what we talked about on the front deck, right? Is there a reason to have a dash pad on the front deck for your lights and your live well and all that stuff like this in my boat? Yeah, it looks cool and you think, oh, it's handy. It's just something else to break, right? So if you got less stuff up there, if you got less potential things to break, yeah, it might be a little small convenience, but there's a thought process behind why that's set up that way. Now, having said all that, my next boat, I will order a remote drain plug. I just like that, but I understand why some guys don't like that. And that's why it's cool that it's an option. Welcome to the floor of another boat. Terry's laughing at me. I didn't catch this. I did not catch this in the first Phoenix I did. But under the dash, it's sealed. That is actually cool. All the way under it, it's sealed up. By the way, there's your fuse panel or your breaker panel. But that's cool. How do you access this when you want to get to your stuff?
I've never done it, but there's the screws on the dash. You pull that whole thing just flips down. Oh, okay. From what I've researched, and then you gives you full access to all the stuff in there.
There you go. That's pretty cool. It sure makes it look cleaner, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Don't tell me I don't go to great lengths to show you guys stuff. I gotta get up.